teachers and professors of Reddit, what is the cleverest or dumbest way you've seen a student cheat? Girl recorded the answers to a test on an MP3 player. She ran a single headphone up her shirt, taped it to the back of her neck, and then to her ear. The thing is, she wore her hair the same way every day. It went just past her shoulders, so her hair hid everything perfectly and she looked no different than she did any other day. It worked flawlessly. My PhD advisor shared this story with me. He was teaching an organic chemistry class, and after the exams, the students could look over their midterms and submit them for a grades if they believed there was a grading error on their test. A certain clever student used whiteout to turn a couple of particularly low-scoring pages of his exam blank, then photocopied these pages with these blank exam sheets in hand. He then correctly answered the questions on the page and used red pen to grade these phony correct responses as incorrect. He carefully restapled these pages into his original exam and submitted the doctored test for a grade. When my professor saw how utterly horrible the grading errors were, he became suspicious. He went into lab and examined this exam under a black light. What he discovered confirmed his suspicions. 7/10 pages of the exam glowed green, while the other 3 pages, the ones with the blatant grading errors, fluoresced blue. Conveniently, the next lecture for the class was on photochemistry. He began this class by discussing the nature of fluorescence. He explained how many organic materials contain highly conjugated molecules that can absorb light and re-emit it at longer wavelengths. In fact, many naturally occurring materials, such as cotton, wood, and paper, contain polymeric molecules called lignins that exhibit this property. He explained that different paper processing methods could lead to different ratios of these compounds and thus no 2 batches of paper were ever exactly alike. He brought out the doctored exam under UV light, then demonstrated in front of the entire class how most of the pages of the midterm glowed green, but certain pages glowed blue. He then said to the student who submitted this exam, "And you know who you are. Would you please see me after class? We need to discuss your continued enrollment at this institution." He showed up after class in tears and admitted the whole thing. He failed the course. When I was in middle school, we had a teacher who was oblivious to what was going on in the room during tests. We began the year with complex cheating systems, but by the midway point of the year when we had the old states and capital test, one kid walked over to the USA map on the wall, pulled it down so everyone could see, then walked back to his desk. Our teacher did not notice. I had a guy in my Spanish class who lived in Spain for most of his childhood. He finished our final in about 15 minutes, then went to the bathroom. Another guy went to the bathroom 5 minutes later, and when they got out, they changed places. Spanish guy took another 15 minutes to finish his final too, went back to the back room and took another student's seat. He did this with about 10 students. They all graduated with A's. Happened this year. Not the first time I have posted this. Kid sat at the back of the exam hall. All pupil bags piled up at the back. One bag keeps beeping as messages come in. Regulations state bag must be removed and phone investigated. Phone is receiving texts with the answers to the exam being sat. Pupil in question has Galaxy smartwatch on. He takes photo of questions with his watch when he knows he is not being observed. Watch auto syncs with phone, which auto Dropboxes his photo. Parent at the other end then accessing Dropbox to see questions and replying with answers. Phone sends text message to the watch. Kid fed up and was caught because he forgot to put his phone on silence. Was a mock exam. I still don't know if they were doing this as a trial run or were just a little dumb. The girls at my school had it covered. They put on black tights with the information all over their legs. Couldn't see it when the tights were slack. Stretch it out however and all was revealed. Sneaky. Oh. But, story time. Years ago, I was an assistant language teacher in the JET program. I was crap at Japanese. I could buy stuff and manage, but, well, crap. I decided I would learn some kanji, so applied for the 10th level of the Kanji Kaiten, a test of kanji knowledge for Japanese speakers, and this was the easiest level. So, I showed up for the test, surrounded by 5 and 6-year-olds, which, given I'm 180 centimeters and 100 kilos, was amusing. Lots of first-year elementary students going, "Whoa, look at the big foreigner." Basically, anyway, I took the test, and part of it is translating one form of phonetic Japanese to another, hiragana to katakana. In particular, one question was asking me the katakana version of I blanked. I quickly looked through the test to see if they'd use the character, as I was sure I'd recognize it if I saw it. No dice. As I was doing this, I noticed the 6-year-old girl beside me doing something on the table with her hand. I kinda glanced for a second, but it didn't register right away, and besides, test, needed to work on that. At the end of the test they gave you the answers right away, and this question was sticking in my head, so I checked it. And that's when I realized that the 6-year-old girl beside me had been drawing that character on the table. She had seen me struggling and decided to help, and I was too dumb to understand it. Task: to write a sonnet. Student hands in Shakespeare's sonnet 125 claiming it is his own work. One of my professors said when he was in college in the late 60s, people could smoke indoors during exams, so they'd just write information on their cigarettes and smoke away the evidence, churning through a half-whole pack over a couple hours. When I was a freshman in college, first semester, I was in a intro biology course. It was a big class, probably 200 students. The syllabus stated that there would be 5 exams throughout the semester, and at this point we had already taken the first one and knew that the exam consisted of 40 multiple choice questions, each worth 2.5 points. So the night before the second exam, I was studying in the library and overheard 3 guys coming up with a plan to share answer. The number of times that they scratched their nail against the desk and tapped their pencil corresponded to the question number and the answer, respectively. On the day of the exam, I listened to their scratching and tapping as a reference to double check all my answer. I don't know what they scored, but I raked in that sweet 95. I remember on a middle school history final the teacher had peers grade each other's papers. Luckily some cool kid that I barely talked to, but gave gum to on several occasions, got my test and changed all the answers I got wrong. I got 100%. I can't tell you what I did in math class. I had a TI-83 and before every test our teacher would check our calculators and make sure the RAM and archive was cleared and all programs were erased. I wrote a program that brought up the RAM cleared message but it did nothing. I then proceeded to write all notes and sheets in individual programs to pull them up during the test. Worked flawlessly throughout high school. ESL teacher here living in a foreign country, effing students cheat all the time. It's terrible. I've seen some of the most clever cheating and dumbest cheating. The most clever was when students would take their online quizzes. They'd have to take them in the lab on campus with a proctor. The test used to be set up so that it would give the students feedback and show the right or wrong answer for a few seconds on the screen. Students started taking pictures of these with their cell phones. Keeping in mind there are 6 quizzes per level and 4 levels. So we're talking about 24 quizzes, at an hour 1.5 hours each. Enough students started doing this when teacher wasn't looking. Classroom setup not really conducive to keeping an eye on every student all the time. That they had accumulated basically all the right/wrong answers for every question and every quiz. We teachers found out and had to throw away all our tests and rewrite them from scratch. One of the dumbest things I've ever seen was when I was teaching at a private, degree millish college. I taught night and weekend students who had no base of English, little time to study, and zero desire to learn. Some students, particularly elementary ed majors, literally spent more time and energy complaining about having to learn English than actually attempting to learn it. In one of these classes, there was a written, short essay, test, another computer lab that was even worse as far as keeping an eye on students. Anyway, the assignment was to write about your favorite holiday, why you like it, and what you did last time. Mother's Day had just passed, so I made that one of the option suggestions. It's worth mentioning then that the term Mother's Day was written in the instructions. Anyway, one of my students submits this essay talking about Day of the Breast, what she did on Day of the Breast. What happened was she used Google Translate, as many students do, and had zero language skill as for identifying misnomers and basic proofreading. So what's with Day of the Breast? She wrote Dia di la Mama in Google Translate instead of Dia di la Mama. One of my college professors told a story about a student who emailed him a Word document filled with random symbols to make it seem as though the file was corrupted. so he could have more time writing his paper. This professor was very tech savvy and figured it out pretty quick. I used to do this at least once in every class, except I would send a totally different paper for another class at like 3 AM. The teacher would email me back after about a day confused. I would take all the time I needed, then respond with the actual paper and a sincere apology. It was late and I was so tired. The best thing to do was not to ask for any special treatment regarding the mistake. I would just apologize and tell them I understood if they needed to dock my grade. They never did. I wrote about 4 formulae on a glazed donut in tan colored Sharpie in high school for a pre-calc quiz. I had forgotten we had a quiz that morning until about 10 minutes before class, and this seemed like the best option. It was a short quiz and I got a 100. Not cheating but just brilliant. We are allowed a 1 or 2 page formula sheet in our exams. At one point somebody wrote in red ink vertically and blue ink horizontally. He then wore old school red-blue 3D glasses and closed one eye to see one color ink, and vice versa. That is, close the eye behind the red lens. You only see out the blue lens. Blue ink is bolstered out and you only see red ink. So he got to X the information he would have on the same page. I heard of someone doing another version of this where they took in a blue or red transparent sheet and covered the page with whichever one they needed. A friend of mine had a long Spanish exam, consisting of an oral speech and some writing as well. For the exam, you were allowed to bring in an A5 sheet of paper with 40 words on English or Spanish, and if you really want, as many pictures as you want. What I forgot to mention was that she was completely lingual in Punjabi, so she wrote out her entire speech in really small font Punjabi, and the teachers thought she was being an idiot and just doodling. She came out with an A. Not a teacher, but when taking tests we were allowed to have water bottles on our desk to prevent kids from digging around in our backpacks while taking it. So this one kid removed the label off of a store brand bottle and printed out his own label resembling it but as all the answers printed. The teacher didn't catch it. I helped my AP politics class develop a foolproof method for cheating. Our teacher would hand out a test each week and make us write the multiple choice answers on a blank piece of paper with our name and date on it. After the test was done, we would hand the answer sheet to the kid behind us. Last kid in the row handed his to the first kid in the same row. To grade it, the teacher would go over the questions orally and give us the correct answers. I told each kid in the class to write the answer as a lowercase c. If the answer was A, you close the loop and make a lowercase a, and so on and so forth for B and D. Obviously, if the answer was C, you'd leave it alone. We all also agreed that no one should get a perfect score. We had to always get 2 or 3 wrong answers to make the con work. The teacher could never believe we were perfect, and he wasn't able to figure out everyone was getting higher test scores. We left the wrong answers up to the kid who was marking our paper. It worked surprisingly well. No kid snitched because we were all riding the good grades gravy train.